Vice President Yemi Osinbajo has challenged the Nigerian Bar Association to work towards reforming the Nigerian judicial process to ensure the speedy dispensation of justice in the country. The Vice President posed the challenge on Wednesday when he virtually declared open the annual national conference of the Nigerian Bar Association in Lagos, where he represented President Muhammadu Buhari. The Vice President wants to see judicial reforms that will fast-track all court cases so that the longest will be a maximum of 15 months.
When federal law enforcers investigate rape cases and make arrests, securing convictions is hinged, again, on the work of state prosecutors. I've made these points, and this point in particular, that no branch or tier of government can undertake the reforms necessary to enhance justice delivery on its own. We need partnerships of progress between federal and state governments and also the legal profession and our administration of justice system. We need the collaboration of the executive and the legislature also at all levels to drive the reforms that we need. Mr. President of the Bar, the next 60 years will see a vastly different country. We will be the fourth largest country by population in the world. And we can be one of the 10 largest economies in the world. We can be one of the most technologically advanced. We can be the safest place on earth to live and work. We can have a fair and just society, assuring all our people, regardless of ethnicity or religion, of equal opportunities.
Joining us now to look at the practicality of the president's advocacy is legal practitioner Dele Faratimi. We're also joined by Felix Mocker, the Executive Director, Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project, SERAP. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us on the program. Now, the Vice President, Yemi Osinbajo, is of the view that cases should not last more than 15 months. How realistic is this? I'll start with you, Mr. Faratimi.
Good morning, Mr. Moka. Good morning, sis. How are you?
Morning.
Morning.
Morning. I'm sorry. I will start with a Yoruba proverb. Don't worry, I will interpret. The Yorubas will say that Owarokojo as ese nikobalai. The cripple would love to dance, you see. He would love a shuffle, the foxtrot, but his legs incapacitates him. Professor Osinbajo was my lecturer. He taught me the law of evidence. Fantastic man, one of the most brilliant human beings I ever came across in my life. But what he has just enunciated are best described as wishful thinking. You don't place something on nothing. Exactly what legal infrastructure does Professor Osinbajo and the Nigerian government, or the state for that matter, expect to place these fantastic dreams that would have speedy dispensation of justice when the totality of the system itself, both the human and physical infrastructure, have practically decayed to the point where the judicial system is anything but systemic and there is hardly any justice to be found therein. So when they begin to spout all these high ideals without looking at the reality, when was the last time any court was opened in Lagos State, especially at the magistracy level? And what is the level of capacity at the federal level itself? We're looking at a situation where both in terms of human resources, both in terms of national infrastructure, both in terms of the enabling environment itself, these things are simply not in place. And then 5 years into the administration, where the number 2 man is a professor of law who had been an attorney general at state level. The most progressive VAD is here in Lagos. 8 years, they were unable to do anything. He was here. And then at the federal level, I'm hearing this fantastic story of how they are going to...
Let me ask you this, Mr. Faratimi. Everything starts with a dream. We will always have problems, but should we be looking at the problems that will hamper a realization of such a dream, or we should look at how we can, in spite of these challenges, be able to do something, make a step, take a move towards actualizing this dream, which you say it's a good dream.
Oh, it's a fantastic dream, but there is a world of difference between a vision and a fantasy. In the first place, we're in a society where the law does not rule. Let's get that clear. The will of men rule. So ab initio, you have a foundation that cannot carry the aspiration that you are busy. What you are preaching is not sustainable given the realities on the ground, and you've not done anything in 5 years to suggest that what you are saying are achievable. So please, I have heard enough of all sorts of fantastic stories, not just from the APC, mind you, and not just from Professor Oshibaju, but this is the point that I am being asked, and I'm telling you, let's get it clear. Aside from expressing the wish, there is a lacuna between what is here in real life and what the vice president is speaking of. He's speaking of aspirations. That's why I spoke of the crippled man who is talking about wanting to dance.
All right, let's bring in Mr.
He is capable of doing anything. Please separate the fantasy. I can't grow any taller than I am.
All right, let's hear Mr. Moka's thoughts on this. Let's start from also, do you think it's too fantastic an idea, impracticable?
Well, just like my colleague began with a proverb, I would say that there's no right time to do the wrong thing. And there's no wrong time to do the right thing. I share the thoughts and concerns that my colleague has expressed. But I think that the suggestion that the government intends to, attempt to shorten the time or to, create the conditions for the speedy delivery of justice, sounds like music. It's wonderful. It's a wonderful idea. I mean, this is not the time to be completely pessimistic about the prospects of actually, having that, done or realized. But I think that it's a practical question. I think that's what my colleague is saying, that it's not enough to simply, declare some of these, aspirations. You must seriously, go to the basics and begin to audit the legal system, audit your judicial system. Because it's not just about the NBA. It's not about the Nigerian Bar Association, or by the courts, or by the judges. Justice is a multi-sectoral, service. It's about the courts, it's about lawyers, it's about litigants, it's about, the economy, it's about, something as basic as energy, as power.
What is, let me interrupt you and just ask quickly from what you were saying. What is the position of the Administration of Criminal Justice Act on this?
The AJC, which was promulgated just very recently, just a few years ago, about 5 years ago, in 2015, does in fact have provisions that encourage, speedy delivery of justice. But the question is, is it actually helping to facilitate justice? How, far has the, government and the judicial system and the legal system gone in ensuring that, some of those provisions are implemented? And so that's why it still comes down to the practicalities, the reality of the, the conditions that prevail when you look at whether it's the criminal sector or the civil proceedings. It's really about the capacity to deliver justice as prescribed by law or as suggested by the state.
All right, let's come back to you, Mr. Faratime. Audrey Okalu's case, many believe true a spanner on the issues around the Act. Do you think that the Administration of Criminal Justice Act is still relevant?
You see, at the beginning of this section, I started with a proverb. Keep it in mind, because it is very important. Everything flows from capacity, everything. But capacity itself flows from political will, because it is what you want that you build towards. Nigeria is not structured to deliver justice. It is structured to work on impunity. And when a system is structured to work on impunity, what you find constantly is that there will be one set of justice for the poor and another available to the rich. If Mr. Orji Uzor Kalu were not to be a member of the Nigerian ruling class, he will still be safely ensconced where he was sent, because nobody has said he wasn't guilty of that. It was all about a technicality. Now, you can blame that on an act, but acts are drafted by men, and justice itself is a process administered by men. Where the court focuses more on the technicality of justice delivery and then strips itself of the capacity to actually deliver justice, because if you think about it, there are Abians on whose behalf justice was delivered. Now, because of a technicality, one man has benefited and walked away. We have not seen any, see, because this issue is important to an appreciation of our problems. How many other persons were similarly affected or would be affected or are unable to afford the kind of legal expertise that Mr. Orji Uzor Kalu could afford? So there are several levels here. So it's not really about the law itself. We should focus on the system and what it is designed to achieve. We are always distracted by these arguments that comes down to the persons. But we must understand that those discretions, those little technicalities, those are the habitations of systemic injustice, or because it becomes unjust now that a man has walked away and the people have been despoiled. Nobody has argued about the despoilation of those people. But not only is the man out based on a technicality, there hasn't been any move to take him back to trial. He's back in the House and in the Senate. That same Senate is already talking about the review of the 1999 Constitution.
Again, I'm sorry to keep interjecting, Mr. Alfaratimi, but you said no move. Let's talk about that a little. We must start from somewhere. No move seems to be made to get Mr. Kalu back to court. Isn't that where the NBA comes in? Whose responsibility is it to push for issues like this that many say it is not on the merits, like you said, of the case that the man was released, but on a technicality? So he still has questions to answer.
It is not in the nature of the Nigerian ruling class or the state to go after somebody that is a member of his own class, save and except when that man has run afoul and there is a systemic, or rather a class struggle. Now, to address the question you have asked, the Nigerian Bar Association stopped being the kind of body that would push those kind of points years back. Years ago, it stopped. The Nigerian Bar Association that we have today is not the Nigerian Bar Association of the Alao Akaba Showroom. It's not the Nigerian Bar Association that we grew up to find. I've had occasion to actually ask if I need to remain a member of the NBA to practice as a lawyer. Now, it is not the remit of the NBA under the law, but it would have been a fantastic idea if the NBA were to be alive to its duty, because how can it be well with Nigeria and with the law profession if it is not well with Nigeria itself? So unfortunately, the NBA has taken itself out of the picture when it comes to pressing what should be in the public interest. So it's not been a public interest advocacy point in Nigeria for quite a while.
All right.
Now, having said that,
okay,
Mr. Paul Usoro has left or is leaving, and there is a new president coming onto the seat. It's up to Mr. Olumide Akpata to decide what kind of bar he wants to lead. But that question is relevant only insofar as it relates to the fact that if the Nigerian Bar Association were to be alive to his historic duties, what the likes of Serap are doing is what the NBA ought to be doing. I don't know how the NBA facilitates their work, if it facilitates their work, but the NBA that I was called into when I came to the Nigerian Bar would not have the kind of speakers it has had at its AGC or even in the previous year. So it's not the same. The NBA is not interested in things
let
like
me
this.
bring
At least
Mr.
I haven't been interested
Moka.
in things like this for some years.
Let me ask this of Mr. Moka. It's an offshoot of what Mr. Farotimi said. He alluded to the fact that the ruling class might hesitate to take on their own in the issue of the instance of Mr. Kalu. Do you think that is a fair assessment of this current administration, whose mantra came with anti-corruption, and we've seen quite a few moves from them to try and bring the issue of corruption to some semblance of control?
Thank you. First, let me remark that I'm Felix Moka. I'm the Executive Director of the Social and Economic Rights Action Center, SERAC, with a C.
By bad. Sorry.
Yes.
Okay.
But that's fine. Look, I agree. This government came on the platform of, combating corruption. And it has done, quite a fair amount of work, fighting corruption in the country. But it is also true that it is extremely difficult for a government to, combat people who are so highly influential, who wield enormous resources and power, and especially people who have access to the current platforms of leadership. It's extremely difficult because the political will to do so is sometimes not lacking. And besides, what we're discussing is so pervasive. It's not just about, Kalu. There are so many other highly placed, citizens of this country who have a date with the law, who have committed massive, violations of the laws of this country, but who are walking free. Whereas there are few people, who are willing to actually, bring them to justice. So this is really about, just the very high inequity, in access to justice in this country. Because oftentimes those who are wrong, who don't have the power to compel the state or to force the state to take action, are left without any sort of remedy. So it's a terrible disincentive, I think, to those who might want to consistently follow the law, to have such a situation where people violate the law, but because of who they are, they are able to walk away. Therefore, the question is no longer about what is at stake, but who is involved, on the scale of justice. And I think that's really unfair, and it's not something we should, continue to condone. Justice should apply, fairly, equitably, and equally to every citizen, irrespective of class, irrespective of, status, irrespective of, where they come from or what kind of religion they practice. But we find that, oftentimes justice is not blind as proverbially, as it's said to be. But it's a challenge that we must overcome. And it's not just about this government; it's about the future government. I agree with, again, my colleague about the MBA, that the MBA has, lost its vitality. There used to be a time when the MBA was, really an instrument for, a champion of social justice. But those days are gone. The MBA can barely govern itself. The other time I went to my branch to renew to pay my dues and pay my obligations to the MBA, I was stunned that even in 2020, we continue to do things, as though we live in the 1915, era. The MBA has not managed to recreate itself,
we can better manage,
recreate its own capacity to administer the association. So I think that it needs to focus and get its own organization right, and then be able to pursue its social justice obligations as well.
All right, I was going to ask you something on the Vice President's recommendation, but I'm told we have less than 3 minutes to conclude this part of the conversation. So I'll just go straight and ask that there are many loopholes in the justice administration, which smart lawyers use to delay justice in this country. Can this be addressed?
Yes, it can. It can, with the right commitment, the political will, and I think a resolve to actually create those conditions for, access to justice, yes, nothing is impossible. Because in other countries that are less, with less resources and less clout than Nigeria, people have access to justice. Justice is not nearly as painful as it is in this country. A case I was involved in 1990, which involved the demolition of the Morocco community, was filed in 1990, was not resolved until 2015. That's about 25 years. There's no excuse. So I think that any government in this country that has the right will can at least begin the process. It's not something you accomplish in 1 year or in 2 years, but it's a systematic, type of program that can in fact begin to scratch the surface of the kind of delay we have in our system. Because it's not just about the courts, it's about the police as well. It's about the law enforcement system. It's about the prison service. It's about litigants. It's about the lack of technology in our courts. You have a judge who is, has on his or her list 30, 40 cases a day and has to take down every word said in a courtroom in longhand without any kind of technologies. It's impossible to imagine, a quicker sort of delivery of justice.
All right, let's give Mr. Farotimi some time to put in his last words on this matter. I know you are a bit pessimistic as to us being able to realize this dream, but if we were to try, what should be some of the moves in your thinking that we can begin to put forward collectively, both government and relevant bodies, to try and come to this point?
Everything is about foundation. I'm not a pessimist. I'm a realist. When you ask me how you build a 5-story structure on a foundation that I know is not even designed to carry a single-story building, I find it difficult to focus on what you have asked, because I know you are asking for the impossible in view of the realities. When we speak about speedy delivery of justice, we're suggesting that what we have right now is not what the system is designed to deliver. That is where the problem lies between myself and most people who are asked to comment on the Nigerian issue. I'm explaining to you that what we have right now is what the system is designed to deliver. If a system is not designed to deliver justice, how can it give you speed? Because it is in the slowness that people who make money will make their money. They've created their bottlenecks from where to make it.
So for the layman
it's
listening, you're advocating for a redesign of the entire system. I'm
sorry?
I'm saying for the layman watching, you're advocating that we begin from the very root, redesign the system itself.
It's inevitable. It's our only choice. We have no choice, unless we keep lying to ourselves. You have to go to the root reasons why we have what we have. It's not accidental that in almost 60 years, we've merely gone backwards. My colleague was talking about 1915 infrastructure. 1915, we governed every structure, every part of our systems were better governed in 1915 than they are now. That should tell us something about how far back we are walking.
All right. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your time and the insight you've brought to the conversation.